Hi there and welcome to the Business Purpose Trends podcast. I'm Phil Preston and this is episode 6 of your weekly update of around not more than 10 minutes, hopefully. Let's see how we go. Firstly, some listener feedback. Thanks to all the listens and follows from previous episodes, including those that came from an event I was speaking at last week where there was a lot of interest in the what, why and how of engaging employees in the purpose of their overall organization. In particular, there was a question about if you have two divisions sort of within an organization with quite different cultures and behaviors, then how do you actually bring them together? What does a purpose-driven solution look like? So that might be fodder for a future podcast. But this week, it's a bit of a foundation piece. How is ESG different from purpose? First, let's start with ESG. And if you haven't been hit over the head with the ESG stick, it stands for environmental, social, and governance. So these are factors that are of keen interest to investors. And this terminology came very much from an investment context when investors saw there might be risk if a company, for example, had very high emissions relative to its competitors or relative to what society or customers and communities would really tolerate. Then it was the investor community way of identifying there might be higher risks there. Now, the terms purpose and ESG often get used interchangeably in business conversations, but they are starkly different concepts. The cause of confusion, I think, is really because it's a very new and emerging area. So the conversations lack nuance. We also see some political agendas playing out, especially in the US, where the anti-woke agenda, even though I don't think most people behind that agenda could even define what woke means, there is a lot going on to try and, a backlash against ESG and that whole conversation about being responsible. So that's, I think, short-term noise that will go away. But in the meantime, it's real. And the Standard & Poor's rating agency actually went so far as to remove their ESG rating. So the letter that said a company was either good or not so good in the ESG front, but they didn't remove their comments from the commentary. But due to blowback, it looks like they've removed their letter ratings. So let's get into it. And I want to set the scene by pondering, well, why do companies, or any organization for that matter, why do companies and organizations exist? Well, they exist to help us do things or solve problems that we can't or don't want to do on our own. So if I'm going for a long bushwalk, I might want to take a small can of tuna with me. I'm not going to catch the tuna. I'm certainly not going to set up a canning factory. So there are companies and brands that will do that for me. They're solving that problem and they're incentivized by profit in that process. Which brings us to defining, well, why does an organization or business exist? And that is its purpose. And I would define it as the societal benefit they're aiming to deliver through their operations. And in doing so, if they can do it well and be competitive, they can potentially earn good profits, which means they stay in business, they'll prosper, they can distribute profits made back to shareholders, or they can reinvest it in making more positive impact through their operations. In the US, there's a company called Best Buy, which is an electronic goods retailer. Its purpose statement is enriching lives through technology. So that's its statement about why it exists, and that's the benefit it's trying to bring to society. Now, for any company, we have to question whether they're actually delivering it, and we'd need to go deeper and just see, is it just a flashy statement, or do they really have measurements and metrics that are proving or otherwise whether they're delivering on that purpose or not? But that's a topic for another episode. But in summary, a business purpose is why the business or organization exists. So it's fundamentally, and this is the key point, it's about value creation. What's the positive thing that the company is doing for society? So with that in mind, let's now turn to ESG. ESG is a framework for being responsible in the way you go about your business. So if purpose is why, then ESG factors are more about monitoring the how. It's a way of looking across all the important aspects of your business and checking whether you're acting responsibly. You could equate it to risk management. The World Economic Forum sets out a framework of 21 factors in 4 categories. Those categories are governance, people, planet, and prosperity. So governance is how well the organization governs itself. There's several factors there. In people, you'd have factors like diversity and inclusion, health and safety. Is there any forced or modern slavery labor practices? Under planet, clearly greenhouse gas emissions, pollution, water use, and so on. Under prosperity, you'd be thinking employment levels, tax paid, and so on. Customers and employees and investors are increasingly tuning into ESG factors just to get a handle on how responsibly the business is operating. And as you can see, there's a really broad spread of factors there. So the purpose of a company is the value it aims to create for society, whereas ESG is a checklist to ensure it's doing it responsibly. It's a bit of a risk management process, and it helps that business to stay in business and reduce the headwinds or pushback that it's getting. So when we think about Best Buy and its purpose statement of enriching lives through technology, it has clarity of purpose. But again, is it actually measuring that or knowing whether it's delivering on it or not? Customers are probably not so likely to be tuned into that purpose statement. It will be more the employees, managers, and investors who'd be looking at it. But for management, purpose really is the DNA of the business. It's what underpins their profitability, and their real challenge is to align their strategy, their operations, and their people to that purpose. Now, when it comes to ESG, it's really about monitoring. Are we being responsible across all the relevant parts of our business? We've seen customer and advocacy groups blow up. It's poor ESG practices. You can go all the way back to the Exxon Valdez oil spill. We can go back to Nike in the 1990s, which became a poster child for modern slavery in its supply chains. However, I should also add that for Nike was a catalyst for them to change and move towards best practice. Nike today states its purpose as move the world forward through the power of sport, which, to be honest, I'm struggling to get my head around. I can't figure out what that really means. So I need to do a bit more digging and a bit more analysis on that one. But the point is that customers of Nike, on average, regardless of what their purpose statement is, they expect the company to operate responsibly. So again, purpose is about the why, and value creation, ESG is about risk and responsibility. And just to make sure I wasn't thinking up something weird here, I asked colleague and fellow purpose enthusiast Carolyn Butler Madden to give her thoughts on this, and I'm going to read out what she sent back in. She said, ESG is a compliance framework. At its most basic, it's about risk management. At its best, an opportunity creation one. Purpose is about value creation. Every business has a purpose. At its most basic, it's profit creation. A business with a higher purpose exists to serve society's needs profitably and sustainably through and beyond its products and services. At its best, purpose is the beating heart of an organization, inspiring and energizing its people, shaping its culture, creating collaboration opportunities with partners, building movements of change through its marketing. It drives innovation and creates meaningful impact that stakeholders feel proud about, ultimately creating strong, resilient, and human businesses for the 21st century. End of quote. So that was a great contribution from Carolyn, and I hope our views are aligning there well enough. Unfortunately, many commentators tend to blend the two concepts, purpose and ESG, as I said from the outset. Recently, I did an interview with a head of sustainability, and that might be a possible future bonus episode, and he was expressing frustration at the level of misunderstanding between these two terms. I think the chances that you are strong on delivering purpose and weak on all aspects of ESG are pretty unlikely, but there are examples of companies that do good things for society overall, but have some weaknesses or blind spots in the way they go about it. So leaders need to pay attention to both purpose and ESG, but they are fundamentally different concepts. I trust this explanation and conversation is useful. I invite you to share it with others in your network if you think they'd get value from it, and I'd love your feedback. You'll find my contact details in the show notes. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Business Purpose Trends podcast. I'm Phil Preston. Have a great day, and may the business purpose trend be with you.